Hello everyone. I hope everybody is staying happy, healthy, and safe. Today I want to go over all the updates that DGD released for Passive Exile Harvest, the new expansion, which is going to come out in about 5 days. And I wanted to give you my opinion about different things that I've saw they released. The first thing I want to go over is all the changes that they're making to slam skills, and basically they added one new skill calls Air Shatter, which is pretty nice. Like I was looking at it, we can take a look at what they're doing, and this is the Air Shatter itself. As you can see, it sends out a couple of waves, and then at the end, there's something that's going to stay there, and then when you hit it with another slam skill or make a what do you call it? Any of the shouts, basically it's gonna uh, explode, which was really interesting from mechanic perspective, but we don't have any definite numbers to go with. So I, I'm hoping that everybody already saw this and read through it. The things that actually interested me was this last line: before you go, you should know that the ground slam, thunder, and earthquake can be used unarmed. This is gonna be really interesting. Like earthquake and ground slam, both going can be used unarmed, means that you can use the gloves, the one that gives like 800% unarmed damage if you're using it as an arm. I don't remember the name, to be honest with you, but it's gonna be really interesting, especially with EQ. This is gonna be. We still don't have the numbers for Earthquake specifically, but I feel like that's gonna be a very good build to go with, especially in the trade league when you can get a specific mods on your two-handed on your gear that you want, and maybe with a specific gear requirements that build specifically will push really high. So look for an EQ type of thing meta, I believe, this league. But as I said, we still have to get the actual numeric changes that they're doing to see what's like the value for the added damage and all those things that we need to watch out for, basically. But yeah, this is a good change, I believe, because we've been in this meta that a lot of people are melee haven't been good for a while, except Cyclone. Like anybody who plays a melee character usually plays Cyclone, or they play a specific two-handed weapons. And with this type of change, I believe that two one-handed weapons. But with this type of change, it may actually push people to at least try a two-handed approach, like hit hard but slow instead of hit fast and maybe a little bit less damage. And this goes hand in hand with another change that they made, which is Bex tweeted this one: two-handed weapons. We've reviewed all two-handed weapon base types and have adjusted their attack damage, speed, and implicit with the goal of giving two-handed weapons builds a different feel for their dual-wield and one-handed counterparts. And to ensure the damage you gain by using a two-handed made up for the lack of block and a slower attack speed, all two-handed weapons have had their base damage increased by at least 15%, with Axis in particular gaining even more damage. So basically what this means is that whatever your base DPS for two-handed was, assume that it's going to be 15% higher. Now with whatever you're using, if it's not unarmed, keep in mind what I mentioned here was for unarmed version, which is gonna be really good no matter what. But even if you're not using it as an unarmed version, which is another way of building it, I feel like EQ with the hard hitting base damage is gonna be really nice. General playstyle is this Ice Crash. Anyway, basically this is the change Thunder, which was interesting to me as well. But the base changes style of this, the change to this play style is going to be really interesting. I haven't had that much luck playing two-handed melee weapon types and pushing it really hard, like you can do with a lot of different spells or a lot of other types of attacks. So this is a very welcome change, I believe, at least in passive exile. We get another way of approaching the game, which is always nice. Give us more options. I'm always all for it. So we went over this change. I just wanted to make sure everybody already saw this, and definitely try Earth Shatter. It seems interesting. With the changes, EQ is gonna be better, but there wasn't any major changes to it. The other thing, they actually changed Perforate to have more consistent damage. Perforate used to have like you would have 5 lines of damage, but now they added apparently 2, so it adds up to be 7 in the sand stance. So you have it used to be so that enemy could be right in front of you, but you wouldn't hit it just because those lines just went past the enemy. But now, because there's more specific, more lines basically, you can have better, more consistent clear with Perforate, which is nice. And again, in Blood Stance, it's gonna be the same type of thing. Maybe they added a bit more damage to, more consistency to the damage basically, which is really nice. They changed Sunder a little bit. Sunder used to be the way to level up any melee character, but now they changed it. But this line was something that some people missed. The cascade will always travel minimum length. So even if you're using the same type of way, if you're standing very close to the enemy, it's still gonna be the same type of damage, but for overall clear, it's not gonna feel as great. So I'm not sure what's gonna fulfill the role of easy melee clear. So we'll see about that this league, especially if people start using melee damages in total general. Here they went over all the changes that they made to the Warcry skills. This is actually nice. Warcry, especially in the last league with the introduction of all the cluster jewels that affected Warcry somewhat too much, maybe even. But with, a lot of people were using Warcries, but not as a very meaningful way. They just used it to gain the buffs that they want. But they wanted to change that, which I believe they're going about it very interestingly, how they give meaning and give character to each one of the Warcries. So Enduring Cry is going to be your, hey, I want to be defensive, this is my defensive thing. And they're apparently increasing the cooldown, which should be fine. You know when you're going to get hit hard, or when you're jumping in the middle of the pack that's going to have like maybe one rare and a bunch of other enemies, or maybe a pack of magic, and you're jumping in the middle, you can just push your Enduring Cry and it's going to be fine. One of the things that they made the change to, and I forgot to mention, is that now they're counting what type of enemy it is. So here normal monsters are 1 still, magic monsters now count as 2, rare as 10, and unique as 20. So you can still use your Warcry in a boss fight and not feel bad. Oh, they just counting this boss that I have a hard time with and I have to fight for 5 minutes as the same as the normal monster I kill with 1 hit. So that's a very welcome change, because that's how it should be, I feel like. But as I was saying, Enduring Cry is going to be your defensive option. Intimidating Cry, another way of getting intimidated on an enemy, which is I believe 10% more damage taken. Ancestral Cry, half the Ancestral Call, I believe, is new. I read about it. Which was designed to work well with specifically strike skills. It causes your next few strikes to also target nearby enemies, similar to the Ancestral Call support. I'm not sure if it's going to be the same, like 2 targets or 1, but it may be 1, then you will still have to use the Ancestral Call support with addition to this. Or maybe it's going to be the same as Ancestral Call, so it will target 2 more. But yeah, Seismic Cry, it's gonna work with slam skills. There's this call, if you can see here, this is the Seismic Cry. Which is a good way of maybe scaling some of your damage, which is going to be nice, as it was mentioning here. Basically, it knocks enemies back, but it's not too much. Keep that in mind. So interrupt is like a mini stun. Just think of interrupt as a very like 0.1 second stun. So if they're casting a spell and they're in the middle of an animation, it's gonna stop them from casting that spell, and you're not gonna get that damage. You get the taunt on them, which is nice, and the knockback, which some people actually are worried about. Knockback generally in PoE is not a good thing. When you're knocking an enemy back, you're pushing them away from you, who's the source of damage. But in this case, the knockback, if just pay attention here, is not that much. It wasn't, I was worrying about it, and I slowed the actual clip down and I was looking at it. They don't get knocked back too much. So it's not enough to push them away from your damage if you're using any melee attack, hopefully. So that's one thing that was interesting, and it actually this line, which reduces the enemy stun threshold. This is very interesting because there have been all those specific builds that rely on a stun and like a stun lock, even bosses with heavy hitting skills and like character advancement with like reducing the stun threshold. This is gonna be very nice for them, and I feel like there's gonna be a surge of those type of builds. It's really nice for you to make sure that the enemy you're hitting is gonna be stunned, because then it's not gonna hit you. That's a very effective defensive layer, just like freeze, exactly the same as freeze. Rallying cry and same thing. Wasn't that interesting to me, to be honest with you, but it's more of a support type. Rallying cry is going to be very interesting for. We have to see basically how it works with minions. It's going to be an interesting minion skill. Minion attacks like zombies is going to probably be using something like this, because it adds a percentage of your attack damage to their attack damage, and we'll have to see how that works. But we'll have to see the numbers actually to see how people are going to build this into minion builds. But Infernal Cry was very interesting. They actually changed the Abyssal Cry. It used to be more like, hey, there was a percentage of, there was a chance for enemies affected by Abyssal Cry to explode doing chaos damage. They changed the whole thing, changed the team from chaos to fire damage, and it covers the enemy in Ash, which is minus 20% by default, but this one says it scales with the power of nearby enemies. We have to see how this works. It probably starts at maybe minus 10% and goes up based on the number of enemies or something. This is going to be interesting for all the people who use any fire damage type of skills. And the exert, you can read about it, the exert types. Those are, I'm assuming you already read about this. But a General's Cry, I didn't see this happening that much. I still haven't. This needs numbers for me to decide, like, is it going to be something that somebody's going to use, or is it even worth doing or not? But this seems like an interesting niche case for Warcries in general. So we'll have to see how or who's going to build a very interesting build based on General's Cry. But in general, I do like the identity that they gave this at Exert. So it's gonna be slower, but every time that you use a Warcry, the next couple of attacks that you make, they still haven't given any numbers how many attacks, but it's gonna deal more damage or maybe get a bigger AoE, which was your ancestral call. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how this is gonna work out. But I do like the direction that GGG is taking this. The revamped uniques, they actually introduced 10 of them. They're very interesting. If the change to Wildfire was really nice, because Wildfire used to, when you could use 2, it was necessary to use 2. Now when they removed that and limited it to 1, it's really necessary to use. It was really necessary to use the 1. but now it's actually making a change to chain from what it used to do. So now some people won't use wildfire because it changes how mm, the actual molten strike is gonna be built, and it just adds like a chain, and you can add more chains to Wall Strike. And what they mention is that when it hits the ground, it's going to count as one of the chains and it's going to keep going. So this is an interesting and very welcome change. I do like the design direction that they're taking it, that the actual unique jewels for every skill will not be necessary to the skill just to work. By default, any skill gem should work, but needs to change it drastic enough that it changes the play style of the build. This is the type of design that I like, because this gives more options to you. Hey, yes, you want to play multi-strike. Do you want to build up of a chain or not? That's a good enough design direction, I feel like. And that's a good question to ask when you're building. The Blood Dance, very interesting. They actually changed the whole thing a little bit, and now it gets the last line, if not the last line, the one before last. 28% increased damage goes up to 30 apparently per frenzy charge with hits against enemies on low life. Enemies counts in low life when they have 35% or less life. So assuming that you have, just for the sake of numbers, 10 frenzy charges would be way too much, right? Like let's go with 7, because 7 is achievable. 7 or 8 is achievable. Whether you go the amulet that puts your frenzy charges equal to your power charges and go assassin, or go raider with frenzy charges. 7 is something that you can achieve, and with 7 frenzy charges, that's 210% more damage in the 35% of low life. So if you want to go over it, basically for the first 65% of life, you're going to do your 100% damage, and then for the last 35%, you're going to do 2.1 times more damage, which is really nice. On overall, it's going to be 2.1 multiplied 35 over 100, which is going to be 35 over 100, 0.73 more damage, right? So that's a considerable amount of damage. But even better than that is that a lot of enemies like Shaper, or not necessarily Shaper, like the Shaper in Uber Fight and the Elder in Uber Fight, or those two, when they go to their 25 phase, the last phase of the fight, they actually have more skills that they will use. So the faster you finish them off, it's going to be easier for you, specifically in the last phase. So this is an interesting way that they went toward. But as you can see, just the third line, 4% reduce attack and cast speed. So you are not getting the full, you still get the damage benefit, but you won't get the attack and cast speed benefit of the frenzy charges. So you give up on something, but you gain a bunch of different things like life regeneration and increased damage for it. Again, very interesting. They did very interesting, which one? Yeah, the Rigwald Savagery. They added 25 rage. So rage is, you're probably familiar with rage. Rage gives you attack speed, like attack damage, all those things. Specifically, if you go for Berserker, it's gonna give you twice or 3 times the effect. I believe twice. So you'll get double the amount of attack speed and double the amount of attack damage that you'll do. And with 25 more rage, and there's another jewel that we'll go over that they're introduced, this by itself is very strong, specifically if you're using a dual wielding, like something like this with a sword. And this is going to be your statistic, because by having this, you have, instead of 50 rage, which is the maximum, currently you're going to have 75, and that's 50% more rage and all the benefits that rage gives you. So this is going to be very good, especially if you're going Berserker. They changed Broken First, which was interesting. I don't believe that this is going to be used still. I haven't found anything about it. brain ladder, brain rattler. You can go to Reddit to see what people are talking about this, but it used to do reduce a stun threshold. Now it does 5% chance to deal double damage as an implicit, which is really nice, and all the other changes that they did for it, and the shocks that people are theory crafting based on this is really interesting, like how you can shock people. So interesting change. Like I love all the changes. Some of them more than the others. I feel like some of them are still gonna be mediocre or not so interesting uniques, but at least they're what they're doing in general is they're giving spirit or character to every unique, which is I like. If like what they were saying here, they're doubling down on what this used to do, which was 25%, 25% increase. I don't remember the numbers to be honest with you, but it gave more critical strike chance in, and you would get less critical strike multiplier. But now they're doubling down on it, saying, "Hey, this is going to give you a lot of critical strike chance, but at the same time, your critical strikes do not deal extra damage." There are specific niche cases for it when you need to do a crit, but you're not expecting your crit to do damage for a bunch of different things, like all the effects that you have on crit or things like that. Maybe you would want to use this. As I mentioned, this one was the interesting one that I wanted to focus on, and the 25 rage, that was really interesting, and as well as the wildfire. So we went over all of these updates that they've made. I'm gonna come to this at last because this was the biggest thing, and I'm gonna rant about it for a while. So maybe if you guys don't like it, I'll put it at last so you guys don't have to watch through it. They made a couple of changes. The tribal fury used to be something that you can only anoint, and it wasn't connected to the actual tree. They made a change, so it's now connects. Very nice, especially because striker skills and currently from the beginning, striker still always lacked the AoE clear that all the other types of skills have, right? And that's the downfall of them. And the more they used to be able to have to anoint this for the one additional nearby enemy gets a stricken, or strike skills target one additional nearby enemy, because that was the best thing. But nowadays you have the option of, hey, maybe I want something else somewhere else from the tree. I can anoint that one and actually take this from the tree, which is that option, that reason for you, or that option for you to choose something, and the benefits and having to consider those versus their basically risk versus reward, which you have to pay, I don't know, depending on where you're, what's your tree, how many points it's going to cost you to get in, or maybe anointed. That type of options, that type of choice is really interesting, and how the game should be, in my opinion. And that's why I love POE. The same thing, they added the Thunderous Salvus, if I'm pronouncing that right. And this is the one that adds +1 to maximum number of sails on Unleash. Same thing, they should do, like, these used to be something they can only anoint. They're adding it to the tree, always nice. That there was a notable on the tree that would make Warcry's instant. They removed that and they added Call to Arms. Based on that, this is on the bottom left type of the tree near the Berserker and Marauder starting point, basically. And using Warcries are instant, but Warcries share their cooldown. I actually think that I missed this, but Warcries currently share cooldown, but they actually changed that so you can have multiple Warcries in the same build now. But this makes the Warcries instant, but at the same time, now you have to share their cooldown, which means that you probably want to use only one Warcry because the cooldown is longer as well. So you want to probably use one Warcry, Call to Arms. If you're close to it, it's going to be really nice. If you're not, then you have to choose if you want to have multiple Warcries for multiple scenarios. Maybe you have an Enduring Warcry, then you want to get hit, you have another Warcry when you want to fight or attack, basically, which is still viable. Let's go to the next one. this is very interesting, Fleshcrafter. So the not the greatest Necromancer Silk is not the greatest base, not a lot of energy shield specifically if you're going CI. It doesn't give you that much except this line minion converts 2% of their maximum life to maximum energy shield. And then chaos damage doesn't bypass minions energy shield. Right? So shield per 1% chaos resistance. And faster surf energy shield, which means that the same thing, like so suppose that you have 49% chaos resistant on your zombies, for example. They're gonna convert 98% of their life to energy shield, and just like general energy shield, when you get hit, you have to wait for duration before the recharge kicks in, or you have to leech, or you have to regen, and you have to think of those things. But at the same time, the benefit of that is that your curse damage does not bypass minions, so they're not gonna die instantly, right? So you don't have to worry about that. While minions have energy shield, their hits ignore monsters' elemental resistances, which is nice and not nice. I'm gonna talk about it. Something that they did mention and confirmed is that if you go 50% chaos resistance, the minion is gonna not have any life and it's gonna die. So you cannot go over like 50% chaos resistance, maximum 49, or they're gonna die. Now let's talk about the last right. Their hits ignore monsters' elemental resistance. Generally, this is really good for any elemental minion, right? You would think. But keep in mind, a lot of times you're using elemental equilibrium and exposures, and generally when you're hitting the type of monster that you care about, like bosses, right? Like trash mobs and like white mobs, they're gonna die no matter what. It doesn't really matter. It's not hard for your minions to kill them. The things that are hard are like the bosses, and in the bosses you are using a lot of means to actually lower the elemental resistances. So when you're fighting a boss with your minions are not hitting an enemy with 50 elemental resistance. You're generally hitting them with the enemy with minus 25, very least, even if they're not using any gem links for them, right? But at the same time, if you're not close to elemental equilibrium and you do not want to use exposure, then this becomes more interesting, because then you are actually reducing by the elemental resistance of the enemy by 50%. So this is not going to be used as much by the necromancers who use witch, or maybe even guardian to build up their minion damage, but maybe it enables some other minion builds to go in, which is very interesting when you think about it. This is going to be very interesting. It's build enabling if you build around. I'm not sure if it's going to be good. I'm not saying it's going to be good, but I'm saying it's build enabling for a specific type of minion builds, which is always very welcome. But it's probably not going to be used as much or that much, basically. Next thing, great old ones. Enemies you kill have a 50% chance to apply their impel damage to all nearby enemies. This is a way for physical based attack characters that do not have exploditures, or they're not they do not have access to bleed explosions to have a clear speed somewhat nice. Keep in mind, this depends on how many the damage that this does. Enemies you kill have 50% chance. Just forget about chance. Apply their impel damage to all nearby enemies. So if you're killing an enemy with the second hit that you're doing, the impel damage currently on the enemy is only 2 out of your 30 whatever percent that you're building. So assuming you do not have an impel effect, or assuming you're doing 15% of the damage as impel effect, then with 2, you're gonna doing 30% of your one attack damage as damage to all nearby enemies, which is not that much. So, but if there's like a rare monster and kill that one, because it's gonna take a couple of more hits maybe, then that's gonna cascade to other enemies, and that's enough damage, because you're probably thinking 5 times, hopefully, or maybe, and then after 5 times you have the impel damage built up enough for that impel damage to be significant enough to kill the trash mobs. So this is an interesting, with the baseline of physical damage to attacks, the chance to impel. You can get chance to impel on a bunch of different places, but this is another place you can take it. Some life, not a good enough life, but the combination of the base physical damage, chance to impel, some life, and this line is interesting enough for me at least to maybe try an impel character with this and see how it feels, because depending on how hard you hit and how fast you hit and the balance between the two, this may feel good or bad. So I want to see like the builds that are going to be using this specific unique to enhance their clear and maybe not use the exploded chest, and that's another way of doing it. And the interesting part about this is the glove spot. I actually forgot to mention the gloves that I wanted to go over. I always forget the names. I'm really bad with names somehow. Okay. No, not the Dorionis. Facebreaker. That's what I was talking about when I was talking about the slam skills. Facebreaker is the you see 600 to 800% more physical damage with unarmed attacks and just some crit multi. This means that all the other affixes that will add damage is going to be 600 to 800% more effective. It's going to be 6 to 8 times more damage basically, and that's why EQ unarmed is going to be something to look forward to or look at when maybe as your second character after the numbers came out as a starting character. But what I want to say is that if this was any other spot, oh, what happened? Sorry about that. But if this was any other spot other than the gloves, then you could have used that with with the Facebreaker, and that would have been too broken. That's why they added it as in the glove spot. So yeah, that's another unique. Again, a bunch of more things. You have the chance to gain elusive on kill now on the 10% chance is generally, if you have a good fast character with high enough clear speed, that's enough to make sure that you have elusive when you're mapping, which is when it's most important because of the movement speed. And basically it's not as good as chance to gain elusive on critical strikes that you can get on boots, but that's a way that would complement your build in a way that maybe that slot opens up for another suffix. So maybe you get reduced some other mod basically. There's a couple mods that comes to mind. The one that I wanted to think about was cooldown recovery speed, like 10% cooldown recovery speed instead of chance to gain elusive on critical strikes, which is powerful in sound, and because you have the access to what's it called, the awakeners, or basically you can mix and match 2 mods at the very least. Maybe instead of choosing elusive as one, you can choose the reduce just said that for reduce cooldown recovery speed as one. And again, more options. I always like to have more options when I'm doing something, and they give us that, which is really nice. Reach of the console. So this is a weird unique right now. So keep in mind it's a 7 link. Now you get a greater volley with whatever you're using in it. arrows fired from the first firing spot, which is the first arrow that gets fired, always pierce. So you have one that pierces. The second one forks, so it hits something and then forks into two different arrow types or arrows again. The third one returns to you, and the fourth one chains for 2 times. Keep in mind, this is the same as a chain. It's the same time as a chain support. So forget about the greater wall. Forget about these lines. This one by itself gives you a chain, but you do not have greater multiple projectile with chain. You will have greater volley with chain, some chain, and then some other benefits. It's a weird thing, to be honest with you. I was trying to wrap my head around how this is going to work out. You just have to see it in action and see how it works out against the pack of mobs. But an interesting thing, very thoughtful. Like, I was reading and I was like, somebody was like, had too much time and somebody wanted to do something very crazy, which is interesting always. I always like the updates that they do to uniques. And another thing that they added is the Undertaker, which gives you the whole will is based on the number of corpses that you consumed and give you benefits based on that. It's nice. It's right here, which is close to the wish starting point, which is right here. These are the wish starting point. You can come here and go here based on the corpse. So it has that affinity with the which corpse things that you can do, which is really nice. Again, I felt like corpses in the whole tree were underrepresented, and that's one way that they're fixing it. And this is really nice. 2% plus 2 number of corpses allowed, which is going to be really nice for what you're doing with your corpses if you're if they're your mean of damage. For example, volatile dead or detonate dead if you're doing those type of things. Chainbreaker. This is a new unique based on one of the new, what are they called? Unique jewels, timeless unique jewels, right? So they added some of the timeless unique jewels notables to the passive skill tree, and now they're replacing them, and one of them is Chainbreaker. Now let's read through it. Regenerates 3 rage per second, increases and reductions to mana regeneration rate instead applies to rage regeneration rate, lose 5 rage when you hit an enemy, no more than once every 0.3 seconds. So for the sake of argument, let's say that you wanna be attacking. How many rages do you need to offset the first line and the last line based on the second line? You're losing if you're hitting, let's assume this is 3 times a second, right? So you're losing 15 rage if you're attacking 3 times or more a second. So for you to get to 15 rage per second, you need to have 3 rage, regenerate 3 rage, and 500% mana regeneration to get to that point, right? So if you're at that point, the whole thing balances itself out, and now you're gonna start the map, you're gonna get to 50 rage, and you're gonna keep being at 50 rage no matter what, and get like all the benefits, right? But there are other ways of doing that, which means that you can hit which means that what was the meant to say? Basically, you do not have to be the only one who hits the enemy. There was a thread on somebody on Reddit talking about how this can be really effective when you are using ancestral totems or any totem build, and because you hit an enemy, you are not hitting an enemy, so enemy. You're not hitting an enemy, and then the totems are going to benefit from your rage. That's one very interesting way of building about it. Or there are other ways that people are going to come up with to get this rolling. Again, this opens up a build archetype that is very interesting, even if it's just the totem and nobody else figures out how to capitalize on this. That's still something that wasn't available, which is now available, and that's always interesting to me. I'm looking forward to this plus the unique that we were talking about. That's gonna add 25 more rages and see what people can do with the combination of these two. Now the last piece that I wanted to go over is the preview of the crafting options. This actually showed me how much GG cares about its community, how much they listen to us. After all the changes that they made to missions, some people said, hey, we want to engage with a specific mission type. We do not have a way of engaging as much as we want with a specific type of mission. We may only want to engage with Alva, for example, right? Temple, or just June, or Einhar, or Zana, something. And we do not have the autonomy of choosing what we are doing. We are at the mercy of the RNG gods, basically, to get one every day and get a couple based on how many maps we run and randomness of which master mission we get. But with this new thing, keep in mind they said that the life force, all the numbers here are not important. They're subject to change. But the fact that you have this option of just there's an abundance of maps right now. Every time that you finish up a new, basically, every time that there's a new league, finishing up a new league, or finishing up a league, you get so many maps. So maps are something that you just put in your map stash tab and just forget about it and never look at it again. But now you have a way of consuming those maps to get something that you want to do. So if you want to do June missions, you have a way of moving toward more June missions and getting those and crafting them based on the maps that you have. Probably this is going to be, we still don't know what that level means, but probably it's going to be, hey, if you put in like a red tier map, you're going to get 3 red June master missions or something like that, which is very interesting. Again, with fossils and essences, this is going to be a interesting change, because now the fossils, especially in SSF, if you never gonna use any fire-based character and you have a bunch of scorched fossils, maybe you want to change them to have a shot at having something that's going to be more useful to you. So these are very welcome changes in general, specifically for SSF and specifically for people who want to play SSF. These are very welcome. Again, the same thing, all these changes are really nice in that if you're not using something, you can change them. You can move towards this type of craft and then change it to something that you may be able to use. You have a shot at something more useful to your specific build, especially again in SSF. It applies to both of them. And change a map into a random map fragment, nice. Map currency, these are very nice for doing something, sustaining some stuff when you're playing SSF, and into a random scarab. Again, very interesting. You have abundance of map. Maybe you do not have access to a bunch of scarabs depending on the league. So I do like these very much. So I feel like this is going in the right direction. This is listening to the community, and that's what I like about GGG. A lot of people were worried about the other crafts that were shown, and they were like, oh, some people are not gonna understand what's happening, some people are not gonna engage with the league mechanic, and this actually gives them more autonomy. Hey, choose what type of content you want to engage with. And I'm not sure if these are going to be the only ones, or what other content specific we are going to see. These are the ones that were shown to us. But even to this level, I do like where GG is coming from, and I'm already hoping that this goes core, which is way too soon, I know, but like, I feel like something like this needs to exist. If somebody likes to do Zana Master missions, they have to be able to move toward that point, not to give them, hey, anybody can have as many Master missions as they want. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying they have to have a way of obtaining those things specifically, and this is a very good way of building and going about it with enough RNG, I feel like. But again, we have to test it out and see it in action in this upcoming league. So these are my updates. I'm very excited about the league. Uh, as I've already mentioned, I'm gonna play in SSF, and in SSF in total, you wanna play something that's reliable without being too dependent on gear, which means that in general you wanna play either spell or minion build, so you're more worried about just leveling up the gem instead of leveling up your gear specifically. But with this league specifically and all the crafting options that we're getting, it's not a bad league to have a attack based character for SSF, but maybe not as the first one, as the first character. So we have still 5 or 6 more days until the league starts. I'm looking forward to their to the information that's gonna arrive basically, and after they release all the numbers, I'm gonna go over and see what are the things that come to my mind. I'm hopefully gonna create another video just overviewing, because I don't make that many videos, but I'm gonna make a video just mentioning what builds come to my mind and what builds I feel like is gonna be a good fit for this specific build, just like I did for last league. Thank you guys for listening to me, and thank you guys for watching.